No, there.
Not yet. Not yet.
There.
Yeah,
Better?
perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, now we can officially start. So good morning or good afternoon or good night, good evening, depending on the many time zones we are in. Here in Ireland, we are at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so it's a nice, lovely afternoon. And we welcome everybody. We now have about 140 people on the call to discuss our Erasmus Mundus program in the psychology of mobility, inclusion, and diversity in society, the so-called Global Minds program. And I'm really happy to be here today. So my name is Anca Minescu. I'm a professor here at the University of Limerick, and I'm joined by my colleague, Associate Professor Sarah J., and also by my colleague Connor Maguire, who is based in the international office and is supporting our program as our European administrator. So we are having here three of us who are based at the University of Limerick, but we are going to talk to you on behalf of the whole program and therefore also on behalf of ISTE, University Institute of Lisbon, based in Portugal, of SWPS University, based in Poland, and at the University of Oslo, based in Norway. And we have our Global Minds program funded for one more cohort of students, which we hope is you, all of you. So the program, the students starting in 2026 will still have access to scholarships and are still part of our second edition of the program that was funded by the European Union. Now, who are we? So we can move to the next slide. We are not just us who are here on the screen. We are also spread out across the 4 universities of this program. So here in Limerick, at the so-called European level, we also have Pablo, we also have Gulnaz. Pablo is originally from Chile and Gulnaz is originally from Pakistan. And we also have at this European coordination level here in Ireland, we have Mona and Ivan and Fernanda, who are our super amazing students and alumni who are dealing with the social media, but also with the alumni associations. And other than the green colors here on the screen, we also have our colleagues based at Oslo. So I'll start with the red, Thomas Schubert and Beate Smith, and they are coordinating locally Global Minds for the students when they are at the University of Oslo. In SWPS in Warsaw, we have Karolina Mazurowska. Professor Karolina is the local coordinator of Global Minds there in Poland. And in Portugal, we have Melanie Fauclair and Ricardo Rodriguez, and they are the local team in Portugal. And to give credit where it's due, it was really in Portugal where our program started all the way back in 2016. So we are about to accomplish 10 years of existence. So we can say that we have gone beyond being toddlers and babies in trying to run a joint master's program between 4 universities. And it was really Melanie Fauclair who was coordinating the program at the very beginning. And we brought it here to Ireland, to UL in 2020. So what are we going to talk to you about today? So we are going to introduce you the team, but also the ambition of our program. And also we're going to, show you bits of the website. And especially we want to talk to you about the application process, right? So if we move on, then we can actually skip the next slide, Sarah, and I can already just go, here. So just to position ourselves on the map, this is just a little piece of the world there, kind of zooming onto the Western Europe, really, on the Western continent, the European continent. And there where you have the stars is where we have our 4 universities. And I suppose what I really wanted to tell you is that in running such a joint master's program, all Erasmus Mundus programs have a European level of activity where we are overseeing the program across all locations. And this is where Sarah and myself and Connor are operating at the moment, but we also have a local level coordinators team in such a way that at every one of the 4 universities, there are additional members of staff, professors who are supervising you, who are coaching you, who are basically being the course directors in the specific locations. So it's quite a coordination enterprise. And in addition to the academics, which are listed on this slide, we also have a lot of our colleagues who are in the administration part of running the program. So at the administrative level, I think that's on the next page, we have at the European level, we have Connor, but also his colleague Ivana Darcy, and they are based here in the international office at the University of Limerick. And then at the local administrative level, so again, in all 4 universities, we have very specific people, again, there to answer and to respond and to support all of you when you are in those countries, right? And typically these supports are at the departments of psychology because ours is a master's in psychology, but also we have connections in most university in the international offices of each university because of course an Erasmus Mundus program attracts students from all over the world and you will always need a visa or you will always need to ask about the visa. Or there are also, of course, the issues of potentially having access to additional funding, for example, the Erasmus Mobility Semester funding. And these funding mechanisms usually work through the through the international offices. So all of these, many people, I won't name everybody, are here together for quite a few years now, gathered together to basically support you from the minute you're interested to apply to the minute you graduate. Okay, so why are we here and how do we keep together, right? Um, Now, this is something that maybe all programs have because nobody runs a program without having a bigger vision in life and, kind of trying to be dedicated to why do we want to educate people, in which direction do we want to educate them, and so on. But the Erasmus Mundus programs have a very specific need and very explicit mission, right? And this is because we have to be very competitive at the European level to ensure that we have funding for our students and funding to run the program. So in our application in 2022, we have committed to these particular general objectives of Global Minds edition number 2. And one of the most important one, which we always, which is the top of the list for our priorities, is that we are aiming for excellence. Excellence in essentially delivering the science, the psychological science that helps us with these grand challenges, right? Like the SDGs, right? The Sustainable Development Goals, the big challenges of our times involving climate change, social inclusion, the digital transitions, and diversity and migration in all of our societies around the globe. So our objective number 1 is really to try to achieve the best level, the best standards, the best kind of knowledge that we can gather between the 4 universities to give you an excellent program of study. However, we are also, due to the nature of our program, which is very close to diversity and inclusion, we are very interested in not only educating the mind, but educating a certain set of attitudes and a certain set of behaviors and orientations that come under this really big umbrella of intercultural competencies and global mindsets. So the people of today, and definitely you all, the people of tomorrow, have to have this ability to link to people across cultures, across the globe. And that's because in very little professions and very little jobs will you not have to work with somebody who is not from your village, right? So we think that the labor market very much is orienting towards globalization, towards multinationals, towards mobility across the globe. And for that reason, no matter where you go after Global Minds, you will take with you a certain degree of intercultural competencies because you had to deal and interact with people from many cultures for 2 years. And because you'll have to live in at least two different countries, if not more, during your master's program. So through the lived experiences of dealing with diversity throughout the program, you can develop these competencies so that you can bring them to the workplace after the program. Now, part of our culture in Global Mind since day one has been that when you deal with migration and with humanitarian issues, but also with diversity of any sorts, right? Not just around ethnicity, religion, nationality, but also across identity dimensions, such as the LGBTQ plus or disability or social class. um, we need to be very much in partnership with the world, right? So we have set up, and I'm coming down to this objective number 3, we have set up quite a lot of networks, in each university, in our own ecosystems, with organizations, NGOs, and other groups that are actually working with these problems that we are teaching you about. So we're teaching about migration, mobility, internal, external displacements, but also how to be more inclusive and also how to really manage diversity of all sorts. And we are also working in a network of associate partners and with our Global Minds alumni, with whom we really want to stay very connected, and we are successfully staying connected in most of the cases, so that there is always a connection between what we teach and the world of work. And this connection is very much seen when you go in your second year of study, where you have to do an internship and a piece of research. And this is where this wider network of academics come to support you, but also where the wider networks of non-academics, so all these other organizations that we partner with, come in to contribute to your learning. So through these places of internships, you can really understand the relevance of what you're learning in the classroom for the real world outside. Okay. Now, lastly, we are really proud to say that we are quite open-minded about how we teach and how we learn. And I think that this can be summarized with this idea that we really want to implement a collaborative model of knowledge co-production and skill building. So in other words, the students, especially at the master level, which is what Global Minds is about, are also creators of knowledge. They also produce knowledge. And this is in particular in the second year through your research. Your thesis, your research thesis is your piece of knowledge produced while you're learning how to do research, right? And this collaborative model where the lecturer, the professor, the invited speakers, the summer school speakers, the different activities of the program, and the students together learning and understanding the issues we are researching and talking about is quite important for all of us. Now, it can be much more transformative if you see that you have an active role in it, as opposed to then you come to school, right? And this is the difference then between coming to study at the master's level and studying at the bachelor level, for example, right? Because even at the bachelor level, there is still this approach of the teacher knows more than the student. So the direction of the knowledge kind of goes from the front of the classroom to the classroom, right? In the postgraduate level of education, master's and definitely PhD, we're trying to equalize a little bit the knowledge co-production model so that the students can also bring a lot of their knowledge. And in our program in particular, this is really exciting because you guys are coming from all over the world. So the kind of knowledge that is brought into our classrooms by people from all over the world is really, really important and really, really where the whole learning really happens, right? We really pride ourselves to how transformative it is to be in the classroom that is so diverse as the Global Minds classroom. So just to give you some numbers, like in a typical cohort of 35, 36 students, we would have students from over 24, 25 nationalities, right? And that says quite a lot, right? And then we all have to speak English, and we all have to deal with where are we, in which country, and where do we have to move next, right? So that's quite good to know. Okay, so moving on. So this is what the program is all about. We want to give you excellent learning. We want to develop not just the mind, but the heart with these global mindsets and intercultural competencies. And we want to do it, and we are doing it all in a very collaborative kind of way, right? Now, I'm going to talk just a little bit more about the study pathways, and then I'm going to also pass the ball to Sarah when it comes to the application and admission and what do you need to have to come on board. But I'm just going to take a few more minutes to describe to you the program. Now, first of all, we have a very good website. And we are really, really encouraging you to go to this website because a lot of this information, probably even the recording of this webinar, will end up there. And this is the joint website, right? So like the information that you need to know from all four universities about, your journey through the program is collected here. So the next thing that I want to tell you about is that this is a 2-year program, right? So this is important because obviously when you do make a commitment to join or even to apply, you need to be able to calculate, at least financially, but also emotionally and socially, that you are going to be away from home or at least busy with us and becoming part of the Global Minds community for a whole 2 years, right? And this is quite a unique configuration, right? Because in Europe here, we still have probably the predominant number of master's programs for 1 year, 1 year master's program. But these programs that are 2 years usually are 2 years because you have a very important component in the second year of the research, right? So you are going to dedicate your second year to the internship, but also to writing a research thesis, right? And in year one, you are getting a lot of content and you're getting a lot of knowledge through taught courses, right? So what is it really about? Well, it's about social and cultural psychology, really. So it's a little bit of a niche, not total niche because it's quite a big one, but in the big field of psychology, there are different, pillars, different sections of what you can do and try to understand from human behavior. And we're focusing on this part of what part of our human behavior is influenced by the social and cultural groups that we belong to, but also what part of this psychology helps us understand the societal issues such as migration, inclusion, and diversity, right? So the theoretical and research themes throughout the program are very much around these keywords from the title of the program, right? And I suppose the other thing that is really interesting here is that first point there that is signaled by some books, which means that we are going to give you not just the scientific knowledge, but practical skills. And those practical skills come in terms of, all the kind of coursework that you have to do, the way you're assessed, the way you participate in the classrooms across the universities, where you're developing quite practical skills of debating, of trying to make a case, of submitting all sorts of, essays and reports and things in different shapes and sizes, but also doing, for example, in SWPS in Warsaw, you are doing quite a lot of real intercultural competence kind of mediation skills, right? So you're actually working, through the workshops to learn intercultural competence mediation skills. Okay. Now, the last thing that is important on this slide is that you are going to get that first-hand intercultural experience, and that's almost by default, just because the people in your cohort are all from different parts of the world, but also because you have to study at least in 2 different countries, right? So even if you were Irish, and you were to end up in Ireland, you'd have to at least start the program in Portugal or in Poland. But most of our students come from outside of Europe, and for them, they'd have to leave then into two different European countries. Then the internship, which is part of the second year of the program, can happen in another country or in your home country or in one of the countries of the program. And this does give you this kind of broad understanding of how to negotiate your identity and how to be present in a place where everybody else is different, right? Okay. So I wonder so for me, Sarah and Connor's camera are a bit frozen. So I wonder if I'm the only one, or maybe this is still working. No, it's still working. Okay,
Yeah.
so at least Sarah can still hear me. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
And I can see Connor blinking, so he's definitely not frozen. But
Not
but
asleep.
I'm not sure about Sarah. So okay, so what else? So I'll complete this part one, right? So what are the pathways through this program, right? So I'm gonna tell you a little bit about how you can study with us. So we call this the mobility path. So where do you start and where you go on from semester one. I'm gonna tell you a little bit about the career prospects. So what kind of things did our over 120 graduates so far did after they graduated here, and maybe a very few bits about life as a student. So when it comes to curriculum and mobility paths, we don't really make the rules, we just have to implement them. But the minute you are funded by the European Union, to have an Erasmus Mundus program, you basically have to fulfill these two mobilities in two different countries as a mandatory element of the course, right? So this is how the program is structured so that it takes you from country number one to country number two. And then in the second year, you can return to one of these two countries, or you can maybe for your internship, for example, go to another country, right? Ah, Sarah's moving again. Okay. Okay. And then in year two, so in year two, you have to focus on the internship and the master thesis, and the interaction with the whole cohort is a little bit different because not everybody then stays at the universities where they are supervised. So we're going to have way more interaction online during the second year. But in the first year, you're physically with your colleagues in two countries, right? And by the way, everything is delivered in English, even if you're in Portugal, Poland, or Norway, because the whole program is delivered through English. Okay, so what are the paths? Okay, so we have three paths of study. And in these parts of study, you need to understand them a little bit because you need to justify that you're applying for one and not the other, right? And they essentially follow the logic behind these three paths is the following. In the first semester, you're always going to get the kind of fundamentals of social and cultural psychology. And in the second semester, you're going a little bit deeper into the specialization of the path. Okay. So for Path A, students start in Iste in Lisbon. And for Path B and C, students start in Warsaw in Poland. Okay, so the first semester of Path A is in Lisbon. The first semester of Paths B and C is in Warsaw. Okay, after this, you then separate, and Path A, all the Portuguese people who are now semi-Portuguese because they just spent 3 months there and they can claim Portuguese identity. No, not really, not after 3 months. But anyway, it's a funny thing to say. So all the people from Portugal are coming to Limerick. And here the specialization of this path goes more towards this direction of culture and diversity, because on Path A, you're going to study political psychology, community psychology, and other modules that deal with multiculturalism and cultural diversity that are electives, right? By the way, across all the pathways, you will always have to study research methods because psychology is a science. So in order to do science and scientific studies, you need to learn the research methods, right? And what we have in the first semester of all the paths, we have the compulsory courses, the core courses, which are in the different topics. but you also have always statistical, quantitative methodology courses, right? In the second semester, you can continue on the quantitative path, or you can also choose the qualitative path. So, for example, here in UL, Sarah, my colleague, Professor Sarah J, she's teaching the qualitative research methods. And, you know, a lot of the Global Mind students are taking that module. And to be honest, some of our Global Mind students are so high achievers that they actually take the quantitative one as well. And they take that one as an audit or as as an elective, right? No, as an elective, I don't think they can, but they sometimes really participate in both courses because they want to get as much research skills out of the program as possible, and we allow this, right? So in the second semester, you can diversify your preparedness, your learning of more types of research methods than just the quantitative ones that are present in semester one, right? Okay, so what happens on Path B? Path B starts in Warsaw, in Poland, and then they keep going to Oslo, to Norway. And there they focus very much on this part about interventions and the social consequences, the social changes of mobility and diversity, right? And there you have courses, for example, in reconstruction after conflict, in human rights, in promoting change. So the social change, the social intervention is quite strong on Path B by the time you get to Oslo, right? And then on Path C, from Warsaw, from Poland in semester one, where you've been together with your friends for Path B, you come to Limerick. So you now are going to be very lucky because Path C students get to know everybody in the program really well, right? Because in the first semester, they're together with Path C people. And in the second semester, they are together, not all the time, but still in the same city and the same university with Path A students, right? And in Path C, what we are focusing on is the part on health, migrant health and inclusion in particular, right? So how do migrants get access to health, right? And what is health, right? Like how do we understand the health, this concept of health as in a much broader framework, like the social determinants of health, rather than just whether I have a headache or not, right? So like health is this bigger, much bigger concept of being able to have a dignified life, right? Now, the good news is that no matter Path A, Path B, Path C, no matter where you've been in the first two semesters, in June of that first year, everybody gets together for a summer school. So this is where we bring all the students, especially the ones from Oslo, also to Limerick. So the students from Path A and Path C should already be in Limerick during their semesters for their semester two, but now they can stay on until the end of June, where the students from Path B from Oslo are joining. And we spent 2 amazing weeks. And I can tell you for sure that they are the highlight of the programs in that summer school. So I'm going to stop because I see Connor's hand is up. So maybe I'm being very confusing or something.
Not at all. And I'm really sorry to interrupt. Sarah, do you mind if I just ask you to quickly check your message there? That's okay. From me and the team. Thank you so much. Sorry.
Okay,
Sorry,
so
guys.
that's fine. Okay, so basically this so the first year of the program is where you go to the two different universities and you take courses, then you come to the summer school, and then you enter the second year of the program. And in this second year of the program, you will have to do your internship and also work on your master thesis. And usually those things happen in parallel. Um, and here you have a little bit more flexibility. So the European Union is allowing us to allow you to even go back home in the home country to study remotely, right? But this is not very straightforward, and some supervisors and some of our four universities are not very happy with this arrangement because they can't work very well with supervising students remotely. But again, in special circumstances as well, where there's a lot of financial pressure or other family issues, we have allowed our students to go back home. Now, we strongly recommend that you try to stay in Europe and that you try to stay at the university of your path. So in the second year, Path A students should stay either in Limerick or go back to Lisbon, right? So either Ireland or Portugal. So the second year is meant to be spent in the same kind of path at the same universities that you studied at in year one. Okay. Now, what is life as a student? So this is maybe my last piece before I pass it to Sarah for a second. Well, well, right now we are talking to you as potential students, right? I mean, we're excited, and it is exciting to kind of hope and see and try and meet who our future students will be. But of course, you have to apply, go through the selection process. And then after you've been selected as a student in the program, so rather than potential applicants, which you are right now, we are going to start engaging with you about your visa, about accommodation. We'll have some orientation webinars through the summer. And then we will have a 3-week virtual orientation program before you actually land and start your program at either Warsaw or Lisbon, right? So this is the whole pre-arrival program of us engaging with you. So it's quite online, right, by email and online. Now, on arrival at each university, each of our partners are organizing an orientation session. Well, sometimes it's a few days. Sometimes, of course, that orientation keeps going for the whole duration, right? I see here a very good question. Do we get to choose the path in the first place? So you apply for a path in the first place. So we are asking all of our candidates to give a very clear preference. Number one, I really want to go on path A. Number two, if path A is really not possible, I want to go on path B or path C, right? And we are trying to respect always and to listen to what the student preferences, right? But sometimes, because we have to fill the places on every path and distribute students across all the universities, we are gonna perhaps offer the second one of your preference. It usually happens almost 95% of cases that the students are selected for the most favored path. Okay. Now, during the program, you are involved quite a lot with the teaching. Here we put hybrid and blended because of the second year, right? So yeah, Sarah, maybe you can go forward one slide because I talked about this one now. Yeah, so that hybrid and blended teaching, that usually happens during the second year because you're not all in the same place. But when you are all in the same place, we prefer to do face-to-face in-class teaching. Now, we have been in the past in the situation where some students were delayed because of their visa, right? And then we are trying to, run at least for the first 2 weeks into the program, some of the classes online or allow the students who are still waiting for a visa to still have access to the program somehow remotely, right? The other thing that maybe I want to say here is that after the program, you become our alumni, and our previous alumni have set up an association. And I think that this is probably one of the best things that we have in the program, the fact that you become part of this wider community of alumni of Global Minds program, and you get to understand the labor market through their experiences. And the last thing I'm going to say here is that there are 3 different directions of employment for our Global Mind students. About a third of Global Mind students like the research so much that they stay on to do research. So they continue as PhD students, or they get hired in research roles at universities or outside of universities, but generally in this kind of research field, right? Because a Master of Science, where you had to do your own research thesis, somehow involves and implies the fact that you will have research skills, right? So it's one of the first things that qualifies you to join a PhD program, right? A third of our students go in the kind of corporate, private, or public domain where they work in kind of organizational psychology with equity, diversity, inclusion, or justice, diversity, and inclusion. You might, if you are on LinkedIn and if you're not, go there because it's where things are happening. You might be very familiar with this thing of, called EDI, right? So like the equality or equity, diversity and inclusion initiatives, offices, strategies of most companies, right? So like under the human resource division of companies, you will have a subdivision dealing with issues of, does everybody experience the organization in a similar way? Or are migrants not favored? Or are people from minority groups not getting the promotions and so on? So our students kind of end up working, about a third of them, in this corporate or public sphere with these issues of inclusion in an organizational setting. And about another third, so the last third of the three thirds, goes to more or less work in community settings, in humanitarian work, or with the minoritized group that they are really interested in. So traditionally, we've been having a lot of our students coming from around the world as themselves being members of the LGBTQ plus community, and they want to continue to work with members or with this community, right? Either back home or abroad or in another country to get more experience, because in a way that was their identity motivation to even join the program in the first place, to make life better for the members of their own community. So we call this, the more humanitarian kind of sector, where our students go to work kind of front line, right? So they become the helpers, they become the community workers, or they get hired in NGOs who work at the front line. And one of the directions that I've seen develop more recently from our more recent graduates is this whole area called psychosocial interventions. So our students are very well placed, after all the learning they've done in the program, to evaluate, assess, design interventions that deal with the psychology and the social aspects of inclusion, right? So like, for example, how do we design psychosocial program of inclusion for migrants, for refugees in particular, right? Not just for migrants in general, but for refugees in particular in this particular city, right? And this is part of what our students end up doing, as well as training of these kind of skills that are needed in the humanitarian sectors, training that also kind of happens in these organizations, in the NGO organization, working with marginalized and vulnerable and minoritized groups. So that's more or less the story of the program, right? So we want to give you the best psychology we have in the house in these four universities. We want to give you the research skills, but also the lived experience of dealing with diversity, doing inclusion from both a research and a practical side of it. And we're doing this, by also trying to create a sense of community, right? A community among ourselves as the new cohort, but also community between our four universities that are delivering the program, and our associate partner universities and non-university partners, as well as with our alumni, okay? But now the question is, how do you get here, right? So I see that the questions are coming in. So while I pass it on to Sarah to discuss a little bit this process of becoming part of the Global Minds program, I might try to answer some of your questions, or at least look at them, and then we'll answer them as we go through. Okay, so I'm passing it on to Sarah for part 2.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Anka. So Anka's really given us a really good and thorough description of kind of what Global Minds is, and the different pathways, and what we're hoping to achieve, and what students can then take with them to do, and take to take to their future careers. So that's really brilliant. How do we get you on the program in the first place? And I can see that we have nearly 200 people on the call, so there's a big interest in the program, and there always is. So this is a very competitive program, and you should know that. And that means that the selection process is tough. So this is why we hold this webinar, so that you can get, you know, the best out of this, and you know how best to apply. So let's have a look at that. Okay. So, and these questions are coming in. So how do you get on? The first thing is your eligibility in terms of your previous degree. Okay, so this is a master's degree. You need a degree to be able to get on the program, but ideally that degree is a psychology degree, or a degree with that has at least 100 ECTSs, or 100 credits, as we call them, in psychology and research methods. So as it's a research master's, we do really want our applicants to have a good understanding of research methods. So psychology is important, but so is research methods. Now, if you have a pure psychology degree, it's straightforward for you, because you have a BSc or you have a BA in psychology, and you can click yes to that question. That means you're eligible to apply. But we're also happy to receive applications from people who have a closely related degree, a degree that's in a field that's closely related. So I can think of perhaps neuroscience, or cognitive science, a degree that is very, very closely related to psychology. It's not a different discipline, but it's got a slightly different name. Then you can also apply. You are also eligible to apply. We are also very happy to receive applications from people who have perhaps a joint degree. So they might have studied, like I did, sociology and psychology, say, or they've taken law and psychology. And psychology has been a major subject, or it's half of their undergrad or their bachelor's degree. And in that case, if you've taken a degree that has psychology in it, it's not necessary, it could be called social sciences, but there's a big component that is psychology. What we want you to do is demonstrate to us that you have 55% of your degree is psychology and research methods, and that translates into about 100 credits. Now, don't panic if you don't know what credits are, because some university systems don't use ECTSs like we do in Europe. Some use very different ways of talking about the kind of the amount of a subject that you have in your degree. We have a really nice document that's linked in our application survey, and that document has many universities listed in it, and the types of awards and credit systems that they use, or the systems that they use. And that list, we provide it so that you can convert your modules. Really, we want to know about the amount of modules that you have that are closely related to psychology. So we also provide a space where you can actually tell us up to 40 modules that you studied in your degree. So that, you know, we know that in psychology degrees, or degrees that include psychology, you have modules like personality and individual differences. So psychology isn't in the title of that module, but it's a basic psychology module. So we want you to tell us up to 40 modules that you studied that we can see, because we are all psychologists, or we're all people who are very familiar with psychology degrees. We'll be able to look at the 40 modules you list, and we'll be able to say that student has enough psychology, and they are eligible to apply. So that's the first criteria. You need to have an undergraduate degree in psychology, or a very closely related discipline, or you need to demonstrate that you've got enough psychology so that you can manage a master's that is in psychology, cultural and social psychology, and research methods. Okay, so that's the qualification part. We also want you to talk about your roles. So the the link to the application survey. We've changed our admission kind of process this year. We changed it last year. We've changed it again slightly more. It's slightly different again this year from last year. So if you have been looking at the program for the last couple of years, you will have noticed the changes. Okay. So what we want you to do is to go to the Global Minds website, and the address is there on this slide, or I put it in the chat as well, so you should be able to access the application survey. Click on the link to the survey once you have all these things gathered, and that's where you access the application. Okay, and it's a survey, and we want you to tell us firstly about your qualifications. Then we want to tell us about the roles that you have had. So we're calling them roles. This is the sort of thing that you write in a CV. So we want to, and I'll go into a bit more detail about them in a minute, but we want you to describe any paid or unpaid work experience that you have had. So you might have had some internship experience, perhaps, or you've had a job working in your university, or you've had a paid job outside of your university. We want you to describe that work, and then we want you to reflect and tell us how that experience applies to your application to the Global Minds program. We want you to think about which aspects of that work relate to the Global Minds program. So it's not just a description of your role, it's kind of a little bit of reflection on kind of tell us how that is similar to or aligned with the Global Minds program. We also want you to talk about research. Have you got any research experience? It's really important to us to know, have you done a thesis, perhaps, or are you going to do a thesis to kind of complete your degree? So have you started a thesis or a final year project or whatever you call it in your university? Have you begun that process if you're in the last year of your degree? Tell us about it. What's the title going to be? What was the title? What's the focus of the research? What methods are you using? What's the design of the study, perhaps, or the design of the thesis? Are you doing a literature review, or are you collecting primary data, or perhaps you're using secondary data and you're doing some kind of analysis on some real world data? So are you doing a quantitative study, cross-sectional? Are you doing a qualitative study and using thematic analysis, perhaps? Tell us about that research. And you might have got some research experience by interning, perhaps, with a research lab. It'd be great for us to know about that. Or you might have done perhaps a work placement in a university, and you've worked alongside an academic and you've got a bit of research experience. Tell us as much as you can about those roles that you've had in terms of research. And then the final thing that our application survey asks you for is a personal statement. Now, we want you to talk in your personal statement about why you want to apply for the Global Minds program. We've actually given you the survey doesn't. The survey allows for sort of a word count. So it asks for a character count. So we've given you 20,000 characters actually, which works out to be about 800 words. So you could write that in a Word document before you apply. I'm so sorry, my cat just jumped across the desk. Okay, he's getting fed up listening to me talking about applications. Yes, so we want you to include your personal statement, and that is a reflection. I'm going to tell you a bit more in more detail about the personal statement, but this is where you can talk about your choice for mobility path. So tell us, look closely at the website, think about what Anka was telling you before about the focuses of the different paths, path A, path B, and path C. And reflect on then and tell us why you would like to apply for path A, for instance, what you're interested in and why that matches with the focus of path A, path B, or indeed path C. And it can be, we want to know about the topics and the kind of what interests you, particularly about the study path and the modules that you will study, but you will also kind of maybe be particularly interested in going to Norway, perhaps if if you're applying for Path B and you're interested in interventions. But tell us about that. Okay. So yeah, so the application process is being done in 2 phases. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a bit more in a minute about the kind of the personal statement and the roles and things, but just to kind of give you a sense that the first phase is this survey, this Qualtrics survey that you fill in, and you give us your qualifications, you give us your roles, your previous working experience, your research experience, and your personal statement. And we evaluate these those 4 criteria. We're doing this in teams. So 2 people, 1 person from one of the universities and 1 person from another one of the universities work together. We are doing evaluations as we go, so they're ongoing. We currently have something like 50 applicants to evaluate each, and we're kind of doing it in pairs, and we're looking at those and scoring those aspects, your qualifications, the roles you've had, the research experience that you have, and your personal statement. Okay, we're going to do that 3 times. So after this webinar, you might go away and you kind of put together your application and submit it. Yes, and you submit it and we'll evaluate it. We're going to do that until the 9th of January, and the 9th of January is the deadline for applications. Now I've got a question. I might need to unmute you. Oh, you can unmute yourself. See, can you speak? I've got an ED with a hand up. Person called ED with a hand up. No, maybe you can't speak. You can put your
let them write in the chat, because we are answering.
Chat,
Connor and I are answering in the chat, and then you can finish your. Yeah.
I can see a lot of work's being done in the chat. Okay. So once we have done our evaluations, and I will talk more about the details of what we want you to tell us in your application, but the second phase is the actual application. So if you get through the first round and once everyone's scored, the governing board will meet and we will rank participants according to our different scores, and participants will be told whether they are, whether they've made it through, whether they are an applicant, whether they're going on to a waiting list, or whether they didn't make it through. Okay, so there's three different, and you'll be told by email if we're inviting you to apply to our graduate school. So that will be when you upload some documents. We want to see your transcripts. So your transcripts in the first application, you're just telling us if you have a degree or not. In the second application, we want you to upload transcripts, but that doesn't happen until you get a link to apply in the second phase of the applications. We'll also ask you for English proficiency as well. So if English isn't the language that you studied your primary degree in, we will need some evidence that your English is of a particular standard. So we want people to have a sort of a B2, C1 level of English. I have more information on that. Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay. Yes. So I've talked more about the qualifications so far. No, I'm just going to go back a moment, actually. No, done. There. I'm just going to go back because yes, B2 C1 in English is what we require, and our graduate school will verify your documentation. Okay, so also what I needed to say here was the qualifications that you have. You've all achieved qualifications in different countries. and the way that your award system works might be different from ours in Ireland. We are going to ask you, when you apply, to convert your qualification to the Irish award system. We've given you plenty of information in the survey so that you will be able to do that. But basically what that means is in the Irish system, the UK Irish system, our degree awards are scored out of 4, so between 0 and 4, and a first class honours degree is the kind of the best degree that you can get. Okay. And we'll ask you to convert your degree and tell us if you have if your degree award is equivalent to a first class degree, or if it's equivalent to an upper second class or a second class degree, and you will have the information to be able to do that. So you'll tell us basically whether you have a first class, a second class, upper second class degree. So you need to kind of do a little bit of research about that maybe before you click the application. Okay, and then the roles, like I said before, we want you to tell us about your volunteering, any internships, any extracurricular activities that you've done. And we want you to sort of give us a brief description of those activities, and also then reflect and describe how that experience kind of relates to your application to the Global Minds. Is it, have you done an internship where you've worked with people? Have you done an internship where you've done some kind of role that's applicable to the focus of the program? Because the focus of the program, like you've already heard from Anka, is very much about diversity, inclusion, migration. Does your internship or your voluntary work match with some of those topics? Tell us how that might be important. We also want to know about your professional experience or any paid work as well, and how it matches with the focus of the Global Minds program. You can sell yourself here in this section. So tell us about your previous working experience, but also tell us about your previous research experience. We really want to know. It's a research master's, and we want to know about your research experience, any modules that you've taken, any methods that you've enjoyed, the software that you've used to process data. Tell us about it, because we can evaluate you on research and your research experience, and that is one of the criteria. Now, what's really important for me to mention here is the personal statement. So like I said, it's 20,000 characters, which is about 800 words. We want you to tell us in your own voice. So please don't use AI to generate your personal statements. The reason that we want to hear your own voice is because AI generated personal statements just aren't very convincing. So we want to hear from you. We want to get a sense of who you are. And we have divided the personal statement up into 3 questions. You don't have to use these 3 questions, but these, if you do, then you are kind of really hitting kind of the areas that we are interested in hearing about. So why you want to pursue the Global Minds program. What is it going to give you? Why is it interesting to you? And how the program then, building on that, aligns with your career goals. What do you want to do with the program? What are you thinking? Are you thinking of pursuing a PhD perhaps? And do you want to go into academia? Or are you thinking more about going into the international organization kind of sector, or the NGO sector perhaps? So tell us about your career goals and how it matches with Global Minds. And then we want to know about your research interests as well. So what might you be thinking of, exploring with your research skills, and the skills and theoretical perspectives that you will be learning more about over the program. Tell us about that in your own words. We will ask you for references, but only we'll only ask you to list the references at this stage. We don't want you to gather references. So yeah, give us 2 people. They can be academic or professional references. We will ask them to tell us more about you if we need more information, but you don't need to go and get a reference letter at this stage. So please provide the name, the position, the institution, email and phone number of 2 people who can vouch for you, please. It's really important to us to know which funding type you're applying for. So we want you to tell us if you are interested in a full scholarship, and that is the title we give to a stipend. Students receive a stipend, and they also receive non-EU fees. So your fees are covered with a full scholarship, and the stipend is worth €1,400 a month. So it's a good, the grant covers living costs. Could you also apply for a partial scholarship place? The partial scholarship covers non-EU fees. So that I have a slide with the EU fees and non-EU fees. EU fees are €900 for the duration of the 2 years. Sorry, 9,000. 900. That would be good, wouldn't it? 9,000 for EU people from the EU, but for people from non-EU countries, it's actually 18,000, so 9,000 a year. But those partial scholarships cover that. And then we have 11 places for self-funded students. Could you fund this master's yourself? Please tell us if you can, because we have places for people who can self-fund. So we are, yes, like I said, we have changed the application process slightly. If you've been watching over the last few years and you've been waiting to apply, we have changed the process. So you have to ignore your knowledge from the previous years and just go with what we're telling you here. It is described on the website as well. So yeah, like I said, the phase 1 of the application process is now a Qualtrics survey. So you might be a bit surprised when you kind of click into it and you see it's a Qualtrics survey. But we are gathering the information this way because it's really efficient for us to get a sense and to be able to evaluate our students from a Qualtrics survey where we can download a PDF of each individual candidate and evaluate the criteria in pairs, in teams. It really helps us understand kind of what you want, and it's helping us to enhance and kind of make our application process more efficient, because we do get many people who are interested in the program. Last year, just out of to kind of give you a bit of context, I think we had 8,000 clicks on our application link. Now, not 8,000 people actually applied in the end, but a lot of people are interested in the program, and this survey kind of helps us to screen and filter people who are interested but actually aren't eligible. So we only want people to come through the process who are actually eligible to apply. It saves us time and our graduate school who receive applicants once they've gone through this process. So we need a degree in psychology or enough credits. You need to be able to navigate the form. You need to be able to sort of convert your degree. If you have a degree that isn't measured in the European kind of credit system, we do provide information on how to convert it. You have to be patient during this new process. So you will apply now, but our deadline for applications isn't until the 9th of January. So there's 2 months to go while we're still receiving applications. So you won't hear anything back from us until after January. Anyway, I'm going to tell you now when you will hear back from us, because I've got I've got a timeline. Yes, once you actually apply, you will need to give us a certified translation. Will you need a certified translation of your documents? You will need to give us a transcript in English, and you will need to give us evidence of your English competency. And Anchor and Connor are working hard to answer the questions that you're putting in the chat. So here's the timeline, and this timeline is also on the website as well. So like I said, application deadline is the 9th of January 26. It opened on the 1st of October 25, and it's open until the 9th of January 26, and we're evaluating in batches of 3. In 3 batches, so we'll keep evaluating right up until the end. And then on the 23rd of January, the governing board, our governing board is made up of the academics on the program, who are the course directors on the program. We will meet to decide the shortlist on the 23rd of January. You'll be informed, applicants will be informed between the 26th and the 30th of January by email. So you can keep an eye on the email that you give us around that time, 26th to the 30th, end of January, whether you have been rejected, whether you've gone onto a waiting list, or whether we want you to apply. Then those who are being asked to apply will be sent a link between around the 26th of January. Will be sent a link to apply to our graduate school through the University of Limerick. And that application will include you uploading documents to demonstrate your English proficiency and your degree transcripts. So if you've told us you've got a degree in pure psychology and it turns out you haven't got a degree in pure psychology, we'll know, because our graduate school will have a look at your transcript. So you know, we will have a verification process. And the graduate school will also sort of check on whether what you've told us about your sort of level of award is also correct. So the graduate school then will sort of verify the documents, and we want them to complete that process by the 27th of February. And by the end of February, the governing board will meet again to rank the applications for interview. Keep an eye on your email again between the 2nd of March and the 6th of March, because that's when emails will come out to schedule and confirm interviews with candidates. So that happens in a week, just 1 week, where interviews go out. Connor will be sending out an email inviting applicants to interview, and we want you to respond and tell us that you can join an online interview. Interviews all happen online. Between the 9th, they'll be scheduled between the 9th and the 13th of March. So we'll be doing interviews for that whole week, and we will keep records. We interview in pairs again, so it's all done in a very joint manner. We'll meet again as a governing board to decide on the offers. So we'll have a spreadsheet, scores from interviews, and it's at that stage, it's during interview, so you'll tell us in your personal statement which path you are attracted to, which one you think suits you. We'll also talk about that in the interview as well. And so offers are made by path, and places are filled then by the 23rd of March. So we'll send out offers between sort of around the 20th of March, and by the 23rd, we're hoping to, by the end of April, we're hoping to have the places filled, and the sort of the decisions made. So you will be offered a place, and you can let us know then if you can accept the offer that you've been given by the end of April. Okay, so the last part of this webinar is about sort of financial awareness, and this is obviously really important because much as it's a, we've got 10 full scholarships, but not everyone can achieve will be given a full scholarship. So now you need to kind of think very carefully about this next aspect. Anka, will I hand back to you to do this?
Yeah, please. We did get one or two questions about this also in the chat,
Yes.
especially about whether people can work,
Yeah.
And I do want to elaborate a little bit on that. I mean, the next slide we have here in the presentation is really about the costs that you just have to that are just payable to the universities, right? But these costs obviously don't cover the living costs, and that's really that's all combined for the self-funded students. There is the additional burden of you have to pay these tuition fees to the university, and then you also have to have enough money to live, right? So the program can prove to be quite expensive for the students who do not have basically any funding, right? Now, for the students with the 10 full scholarships, life can be okay, but it's totally not luxurious either, right? So like the full scholarship covers just about the expenses of the living expenses, and this, just to give you an estimate, is about 14 euro per month, right? So if you are a partially funded student, you would still need that 1,400 euros per month. If you are a self-funded student, you still need that 1,400 euros per month, right? And as a self-funded or partially funded student, you still also need to pay the tuition fees. Now, the good news with the tuition fees is that you can split them in four and pay in 4 installments. So the 9,000 euro for EU students for the 2 years can be paid in 4 installments of basically 2,700 something, right? So like the 2,225, right? So 9,000 divided by half is 4,500. By half again is 2,200 something, right? So you can pay in 4 installments, right? The tuition fee to the university. However, the money that you need to live, to pay your rent and to eat and maybe drink, although we don't encourage drinking, but water and juice you still have to have, right? That is important to have, and also you need some money for travel, because that again is another additional expense of our program. And the most difficult expense is for the students who also need visas or residence permits, because that's an additional cost to the tuition fee that you pay to the university. By the way, everybody just pays to the University of Limerick, and University of Limerick then distributes these fees around the partner universities. So you just have to focus on Limerick for now, because we coordinate the program. But yeah, the cost of the tuition fee is one thing. For the scholarship students, these are covered, so maybe that's less of a worry. But then the living costs are the next big category. And then for those non-EU students, you have the category of payments related to the visas and the residence permits, right? So the next slide, we try to give you a little bit of an estimate, right? But these numbers really kind of change every year, and they're kind of hard to contextualize. So like, I think that even if you look, so Sarah, you can go to the next slide. Even if you look at this slide, the prices can still be checked, or you might best get in touch with the current students of the program or with the alumni to really find out how expensive is life, right? So here on this slide, for example, we're giving you some indication of, in Portugal, if you need a visa, is 80 euros. And for the residence permit, you need to pay another 160 euro. So in total, just for your legal right to be in the country, you're paying 200 and, oh my God, my maths today is terrific, 240 euros, right? Just for Portugal, right? Because you need to pay for the visa to get into the country in the first place. And once you go to the country, you need to also pay for the permit to stay, to reside, the residence permit, right? For Ireland, this is way more expensive. So the Irish residence permit costs 300 euros. and the visa costs are 60 euros. So again, even just for the visa on Path A, you have the 360 for Ireland and the 240 for Portugal. That's quite a lot of money just for visas, and that's just for year one, right? I don't believe that perhaps when you apply for the Irish visa, you can apply for a year and a half, so the second semester plus the second year, but I'm not 100% sure if that's how it works, if the maximum is 1 year. But we do have specialists that can guide you with all of these visa and residence permits applications in the international office. There on this slide, we also put a little bit the estimation, of like, for example, flights, But I was just checking now that so in close to Limerick, we have an airport called Shannon Airport that is very good if you fly across the Atlantic, right? So if you come from especially North America, you will find a flight to bring you to Shannon. But from anywhere else around the world, you're more likely and cheaper to fly to Dublin, which is the capital of Ireland, right? And then you have to still make your way from Dublin to Limerick, which is another 200 kilometers. And the bus, the one-way bus ticket for that is over 25 euros now, right? So like all of these costs, the transportation costs add up quite fast in kind of bringing you from whatever country to the next country. And then within that country, even from the airport to your accommodation or to the university. It's important that you do look at these kind of calculations of how much would you actually need. It's a little bit counterintuitive that in Limerick, which is not a capital city because we are not Dublin, you still need quite a lot of money, almost the same amount of money as you would need to live in Oslo, which is a major capital city of Europe. But in Ireland, the costs are just really, really high overall. And sadly for our program and for the world, we even saw the costs of Lisbon and Warsaw, which used to be, which are our first semester countries, cities, right? The cities where the students go in the first semester, and they used to be much cheaper than the second semester university cities and countries, right? But we have seen that even the price of living has increased a lot in Warsaw and in Lisbon, especially for accommodation. So the prices for accommodation have just kept going up and up and up since 2017 when we first started this program, and that it is just it makes us question a lot our job here, because we are very much following a decolonized psychology movement. We are very much in favor of the idea that education, especially third level education, is master's level education, should be more accessible and should be open to the global south and to people who are not super rich in the global north. But what we're seeing is that it's actually very, very expensive to do this, right? So we are watching how, in the end, the program is only feasible either for people who secure a full scholarship or for people who can actually secure this additional, find the money, right? So it's for us it's quite sad, because our whole program is about decolonization, is about inclusion, is about access of many to the knowledge, right? And then we see that actually no, it costs too much. So people who cannot have the security of the funding, either from their parents or from previous savings or from other jobs, are really, really struggling. Yeah? Now, somebody asked me whether you can work during the program, and I want to answer by saying most likely in the second year, yes. But in the first semester, it's going to be very difficult for you to work. First, because, first your paperwork might be a problem to start with, right? So like by the time you secure your residence permit, the next thing is to get a working permit or to figure out how many hours you're even allowed to work based on your residence permit. Okay, so this is if you're non-European. But even if you are European, and you don't need a working or residence permit. The problem is that this is a master's program, so it is quite difficult to study for it, right? And in both Poland and Portugal, in the first semester, you do have a lot of coursework. So there are 5 modules in each of the universities, and there is just a lot of hours that you are required to be at the university. Now, we are a master's program, which means that we are not in kindergarten to take attendance and so on, But because you are changing academic environments and because you are typically global mind students are highly motivated and high achievers, because otherwise they don't make it into the program because with such high competition. So in the end, last year, we evaluated over 530 applications. So these were the fully completed, fully eligible, fully absolutely could take this master's program, right? For only 36 places on the program, right? So like you can imagine that the standards are really high. And for you to be able to maintain that high performance rate, you need time to study, which means that in the first semester in particular, you have less time and less possibilities to take. Definitely not a full-time job, but definitely even a part-time job is very difficult to secure, right? In the second semester, what happens is that you only have 4 modules because the summer school that happens in June for all the paths is giving you the full credit load of that second semester. So each semester is worth 30 credits in our system, in the European Transport Credit System, ECTS. So you're getting the 30 credits for the second semester from 4 modules that you do during the semester and the summer school that you do at the end of the second semester at the end of June. So you have more time for a job potentially. But again, you will have to have the hurdle of how many hours can you afford to work under your residence permit, but also what kind of job will be available to you, how fast can you secure the job, and so on. So what we would like to tell to our students is that you need to be able, for you to not have a complete mental breakdown and for you to be able to still sleep and have a decent student life. And when I say decent, really don't think parties, but just survival level, right? You do need to have the funding for at least year one put aside before you come to the program. If you don't, and if you rely on additional sources of funding or a job that you might or might not be able to secure during year one, you will be incredibly stressed. So you're kind of setting yourself up for having an incredibly hard time. And for our program, we cannot really offer more than how you are selected in the first place. So we are going to be in the last round of funding. So the full scholarships are just going to be the ones we offer. The partial scholarships are just going to be the one we offer. There is no backup. There is nothing else that the program can offer you. I saw there that Sarah did write in the chat that, and we actually have a next slide here where we have done some research and we have gathered some intelligence, just like the Secret Service people gathering intelligence about what kind of other funding our students have used. And most of the time, if you cannot secure either partial or full scholarship from us, from the program, some of our students were successful in securing national funds, national grants. So, for example, the Dutch and the German governments offer some sort of a scholarship for Dutch and German students to study abroad on a master program, right? I think there are these kind of arrangements in some Latin American countries as well. I know in the past there were some arrangements like this even for Indonesian students. But again, it will really depend on your own country and your chance of being competitive in your own country in applying for those scholarships, right? The other path, which is, of course, the American way, which we, of course, dislike, well, not of course, but which is, of course, problematic for you after you graduate, is to take a loan, right? So there are these Erasmus Plus master degree loans available to some people, mainly from Europe or from this part of the world. But of course, that means that you're finishing the master's program in debt. which apparently is the rule now in the US, which is really what I find very sad because, you're starting your life kind of in minus, and that puts pressure, of course, then on getting on the job market and paying off your debts and so on. But again, this is part of you and your family's calculation of whether this journey into the Global Minds program is worth that kind of investment and that kind of financial risk. What we can give you access to on top of or irrespective of everything I've just said is that there are Erasmus Plus mobility grants that are available for 1 semester, right? So, for example, the students who do not have a full scholarship, Erasmus Mundus scholarship, and start in Path A in Portugal, can apply for such an Erasmus mobility grant to come to Ireland in the 2nd semester. So in any way, you cannot have any additional funding for that first semester. So you have to find a way to survive in Portugal. And then you have to apply and might get, but there is always the possibility you don't get this mobility grant, this Erasmus Plus mobility grant. And the reason why there is always a possibility not to get it is that Erasmus Mundus students don't have any sort of privilege in accessing even more Erasmus Plus funds, right? So you enter in competition with all the other students from Portugal, for example, or from SWPS University who want to study a semester abroad. So, this year there might be 100 and next year there might be 200 of such students from across the whole university who are applying for the Erasmus Plus mobility funds. And you might or might not win that competition. There is no special favors. We cannot pull any strings to guarantee these semester grants, right? Now, the other type of Erasmus Plus grant, so this is outside of the Erasmus Mundus grant, right? And these are only applicable for the students who don't have a full Erasmus scholarship grant. So for the partially scholarship students or for the self-funded students, you can apply for an Erasmus Plus mobility grant for your traineeship, for your internship period, right? And sometimes you can apply for this traineeship for parts of your master's or of your research master as well. The problem is you can only have one of each. So if you get a semester abroad Erasmus Plus mobility grant, and if you also then have a traineeship grant, that's all you can have. You can't have another one of any of these during the master's program. So it is a little bit tricky and a little bit risky, but it is a door that we are definitely forcing open for all of you at all of our universities, right? So people who start in Poland and in Portugal have the opportunity to apply for such semester scholarship from Erasmus Plus for the 2nd semester into the program. And when you are in your 2nd semester in Oslo and in Limerick, you can apply in these universities for a traineeship grant for your 2nd year, for the internship period of your 2nd year. And of course, while you're on the program, we give you all this kind of information. However, I would urge you to consider really, really carefully how you can pay for the first year of the program without putting yourself under the severe stress and the duress of basically not being able to eat. Yeah, so we had a case in the past where one of our students became vegetarian because she really couldn't afford the food anymore, and that was really, really difficult to watch, and we just cannot really help in those situations. So then dropping out of the program kind of halfway through because the financial pressure is too much is quite a stress, quite a traumatic event, right? So we would encourage you to do this financial calculation and involve your family and check for local, national ways of funding before you commit to take a place on the program. I know it's very it's not very encouraging to hear this, but we do have to be very honest and very upfront as to how expensive the program really is, right? And it's not so much the tuition fee that is a cost, but it's really trying to figure out how to meet your living cost demands and the mobility demands, right? Including the summer school, which is a cost on its own because it's outside of the semester, so it's additional housing. And for the Oslo students, is additional visa costs and additional travel costs, right? For Path 2 students to come to Limerick for the summer school. Now, for the next slide, we are just we had prepared this idea of working as a student and the difficulties of that. Now for the second year you have more flexibility to work because you might even find an internship that is paid. So this is not the rule, but I think maybe 1 in 4 or 1 in 3 of our students do find paid internships. So that already contributes financially with something, right? But again, the internship is only 3 months in principle. So what do you do for the rest of the year? The other issue is that in the second year, you can most likely and most with some exceptional circumstances, you can in principle also return to your home country and do the second year remotely, right? So do your internship maybe even in your home country. And also be supervised remotely and be part of the Global Minds activities remotely, right? As I said before, for many reasons, I would recommend that you try to stay in one of our countries and at one of our universities during the second year, because, this is the one time in your life that you have this chance, to live abroad as a student and to have so much learning and so much of an experience from everybody else that is there with you. What we saw is that the majority of non-EU students, so students coming from outside the European Union, end up staying in our countries. But we saw that there is a trend among our students that the European students find it even too expensive to spend the second year in these European countries of our Global Minds program. So there is, it's not, I don't want to generalize, but I could see that, when a non-European student makes the commitment to join the program, they kind of make the 2-year commitment and they get the best out of it. Also, if you are in the country and complete the program from the country, especially from Ireland, for example, you get a 2-year visa after finishing the degree in Ireland, right? So like you get the right to stay in the country for 2 more years to look for a job, right? And that is quite enticing and it's quite exciting for non-European students, right? While for European students, it's kind of easier to just go back to mama because it's just a 2 or 3 hours away flight and maybe come back and visit the university or even meet the supervisors a few times throughout the year. But also they don't necessarily need that visa bonus, right? Because they could work in any of the European countries without having to live there for a certain time, right? I did answer to this in the chat earlier that unfortunately we cannot cover, even for the visa support, we can't really issue letters for your family or family members or co-dependents to come with you. We can only support you as a student. And yeah, I don't know, like, is there anything else that I'm missing about the financial issues? I don't know, Sarah, if there's anything on your mind. Yeah,
No,
do your calculations, I think is my bottom line for that.
I mean, someone asked if 1,400 euros is enough. I'd struggle.
Yeah. Yeah,
But,
I mean,
you
this
know,
is
give
what
your
the
students-
scholarship students have, right? And
Yeah.
for the scholarship students, as I said earlier, it's just about enough, right? But I think
Just about.
also it's not always enough, right? So again, it depends on. We were making such a calculation last year for the Oslo student, Path B student, who basically has to keep their accommodation in Oslo for the whole month of June so that they can return to the same accommodation maybe in July, August for the second year, right? But also come to Limerick to the summer school for only 2 weeks, right? the costs are way beyond the 1,400, right? So by the time you pay for accommodation for 2 weeks in Limerick for the summer school, and your accommodation in Oslo, and the flights, and the visas to come to Ireland, you're way over budget, right? So like even in the case of a full scholarship student with the 1,400, if that's the only thing they have, they'll have to try to save in the rest of the year before or after to be able to meet this challenge, right? Um, but that still gives you an indicator, right? Because these 1,400 are given across the European Union for students studying in any countries. So you might it's an average, right? So in some countries you will need less than that, and in other countries you might need a little bit more than that. But it's meant to average out, right? So I would say that if you are in the position of not getting a scholarship but still really wanting to be on the program, with or without the tuition fee waiver, so the partial scholarship, I think you should still calculate that you would have this minimum of 1,400 a month as a rule of thumb, as an average that the European Commission applies across all Erasmus Mundus programs, across all the countries that are involved in running these kind of programs, right? And bear in mind that it's an evening out, right? So we've had students, for example, on Path A that are choosing to return to Lisbon, even if they are supervised by Limerick professors, right? Because they do want to stay in Europe. Limerick supervisors agreed to supervise remotely, but it is still cheaper for them to go back to Lisbon. Yeah? So because on Path A, you have Lisbon and Limerick. So in the second year, you can stay in either of those two countries because you get supervision from either of those two countries. So that is possible. We absolutely support you in that kind of negotiation of finances and study at the same time. Yeah. Yeah, so I think this was everything we wanted to say. It's yeah, it's gonna be exciting for all of you to apply. It's gonna be exciting to find out what is gonna happen. As Sarah explained, we do have quite a lengthy application process, but this is because we don't do first come first serve, and we really rank all the applications, right? So based on this ranking from the original responses, the first survey that you fill in, you are then invited for interviews, and then we rank again the results of the interviews. What we can guarantee you is that this evaluation is as fair as we can get it, because you essentially can have 4 different people from all 4 universities having evaluated either your written application or your interviews, right? So it's really, yeah, it's the fairest system we could come up with. And we do look for the fit to the program, right? So what we get is this combination of students who have very good results, very good academic results, right? Because in so many applications, of course, the ones who are pushed up by the higher grades, the higher results in their bachelor degree, with interesting curricula or experiences or life experiences or research experience, and these are then ranked, right? So like there is no preference given to European or non-European candidates. There is no preference given to somebody who said full scholarship or no, we are ranked, right? And if you say that you can only do the program with a full scholarship, you're ranked within the full scholarship column, right? These are students who are only applying for a full scholarship, and the top 10 of that ranking get it after the interview, right? And then it's the same for partial scholarships. If you say that you can join the program based on a partial scholarship, we're ranking all the students who applied for this. And then if you say that, oh, but I could also have a self-funded place, then you're ranked again in the self-funded place, right? So like you, of course, you maximize your chances if you tick all 3, because you are going to be ranked in these different, in the all 3 categories. However, if you tick the I can come as a self-funded student, but in reality you can't. You are essentially taking the place away and delaying the application of the next person on the list, right? So like we would really urge you to tick those boxes with the full knowledge and commitment that you can, right? So like, and again, what we've seen is that the decision is very hard for the students who are given a partial scholarship, because they said, oh, I just take partial scholarship because wouldn't it be great to get something? But in reality, they didn't have the full calculation that they could have. They could still afford the program even without having to pay the tuition, right? And, these students usually drop out. So then we have to go further down the line to the next on the line to offer and so on. So that delays a lot of process when a student kind of over commits and then realizes that no, they cannot really accept, right? So try to be honest for your sake and your colleagues' sake and for our sake, because what's for you won't pass you by. So hopefully, all of you who are going to join us next September are going to go through this whole application process very successfully. And hopefully, for those of you who don't manage to do it for this year, we might see you in the next year. And for the 2027 intake, we do not promise yet. We cannot promise yet any scholarships, but we probably will continue to run the program with self-funded students. So this is as much as we can answer and promise anything for now. I don't know if there are other unanswered questions or trends. I saw a lot of questions earlier, so Connor is probably shaking the fingers or hands trembling by now, because I saw a lot of questions around, the type of scholar, bachelor you have or master you have and so on, and around the English proficiency and stuff like that. So I don't know. Maybe what we can do right now is stop the recording and then continue a little bit with kind of the Q&A part, where we can answer something more specific. And I think, Connor, you might want to maybe also, say something